At that time, he arrested me. He arrested. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I come to you this evening with dire news about treason, espionage, rape, and murder that has taken place in the state of Minnesota. In 2021, December, if I remember correctly, my Veterans Affairs identification was stolen from the Lincoln Depot Bar in St. Cloud, Minnesota on Lincoln Avenue. My identification was stolen from the bartender there that uses the name Troy. He'd worked there for years, and I had trusted him with the identification and had even asked him to be discreet about checking its validity on his computer system. He indicated his system wasn't working correctly. That was a lie. He then indicated that my identification was fake. That was also a lie. He made a big scene in front of everyone at the bar and stole my identification. I know for a fact that my identification came up as valid because he began asking me questions about the information that had come up on the screen. So I know when he scanned my ID that it did in fact give him information about me because of the questions he asked me pertaining to that information, even though he insisted to everyone else there that nothing had appeared and that in fact the ID was fake. There was a Stearns County corrections officer at that bar that night, a corrections officer, Bienusa, who witnessed the event. And in fact, Troy, the bartender, paid him off with a pitcher of beer to go along with what Troy was doing. In fact, Troy wouldn't have needed to bribe him at all if the ID had indeed been fake, would he? So, I left the bar shortly afterward, made a call to report the card stolen. Stearns County Dispatch, who takes the calls for the St. Cloud Police Department, indicated that they weren't going to do anything about the theft of my identification. Since that time, since December of 2021, after the theft of my Veterans Affairs identification, people have tried to kill me numerous times. There was an instance in 2022 where a paramedic attempted to assassinate me with a nicotine overdose by injecting me with something he claimed was saline solution. Saline solution comes in an IV drip. It doesn't come in a syringe. And when the injection didn't kill me, and I almost had a heart attack from the nicotine overdose, the paramedic asked me if I wanted the antidote and wanted to inject me again. Of course, I wasn't going to let him inject me with his so-called antidote. Why would I have needed an antidote for what he had just injected me with to begin with if it was saline solution? There was another man involved the night my Veterans Affairs identification was stolen. A Cade Walker Gorky. The night in question, he assisted Troy the bartender in covering up the theft, and in fact also admitted that he hated the United States of America, that he hates the United States military, and that he had murdered a United States military serviceman while committing acts of treason and espionage against the United States of America. Cade Walker Gorky is a saboteur that has since targeted members of the Trump administration, and with the help of Celeste Walls, gained employment with the St. Cloud, Minnesota Police Department. And as long as I'm thinking about Corrections Officer Bienusa and how he was at the bar that night, I'd also like to mention how I was recently unlawfully imprisoned by domestic terrorists at Stearns County Jail, where during that time, Corrections Officer Bienusa admitted to one of the other inmates that happened to be at the jail that Corrections Officer Bienusa had once lied to a judge, telling them that a specific man had raped his relative because the man in question had evidence against Corrections Officer Bienusa. I have witnessed the state of Minnesota's mental health system assaulting numerous innocent victims with microwave weapons built into mental health facilities repeatedly since 2022. At the St. Cloud Hospital in 2022, hospital staff in the ER were assaulting a woman with a microwave weapon aimed directly at her head that was coming down directly from the ceiling above her and gave her brain damage to the point that she could not remember her own name. The staff were the ones controlling the microwave weapon. They were doing it intentionally, and they gave the woman such severe brain damage she couldn't remember her own name anymore. This sort of thing has been going on in the state of Minnesota consistently and without repercussions for those doing it for the past 42 months since the theft of my Veterans Affairs identification at the Lincoln Depot bar. I've witnessed these events transpire and am aware that the community behavioral health hospitals in the state of Minnesota are holding innocent victims hostage, where they are doing the same things, where they have microwave weapons that are controlled by the staff and are being used to assault the patients, causing brain damage and also ultimately brain cancer. These things are being done with intent, and numerous members of the Walls family have been involved in these crimes against the American people. As I said, I was unlawfully imprisoned for 5 months between December 8th, 2024 and May 1st, 2025. During that time, I was assaulted with both microwave weapons and X-ray devices repeatedly over the course of those 5 months while being unlawfully imprisoned, both in Stearns County Jail and Minnesota mental health facilities, where other innocent people were being tortured as well. These things have gone on during Tim Walz's governorship of the state of Minnesota ever since he was elected. I have audio evidence that proves beyond any reasonable doubt that members of the Walz family have intentionally lied and covered up these crimes willingly and knowingly, aiding and abetting the saboteur, Cade Walker Gorky, who, as I said, hates the United States of America, killed a military serviceman by his own admission. And I have had numerous people try to kill me personally more than once in an attempt to cover up these crimes. What's even worse is that these people have intentionally committed acts of child molestation and rape and protected child molesters that ran a daycare center in the early 2000s. This is something that these people have been doing for the past 20 years. It isn't just since Governor Tim Walz was elected, yet since Tim Walz was elected, the Walz family has actively engaged in these crimes. As I said, they are torturing and murdering innocent people by assaulting them with microwave and x-ray weapons in the mental health system in the state of Minnesota. The state psychiatrists are actively engaged in covering up these crimes by trying to dismiss them as symptoms of mental illness and prescribing medications that cause extreme agitation and homicidal feelings and thoughts, with the logic that because the patients didn't kill anyone, even though the drugs make them homicidal, the drugs must work. This is what's been going on in Tim Walz's Minnesota.